It took Kamala Harris just 2 days to essentially clinch the Democratic nomination after Joe Biden bowed out, and the media have been, well, cheering her on ever since. The mainstream press, fueled by Democratic leaks, have been pushing the president to step aside, which he did, for the record, 1 hour and 45 minutes after our program ended last Sunday, and many journalists and commentators instantly embraced the vice president as their new champion, who, of course, would break several barriers. Now, this is as Donald Trump is just starting to pound away, painting Harris as a loony left-winger and, naturally, tying her to the Biden record. Look at the coverage.
The excitement among women is very clear. The excitement among black women through the roof. The excitement among the black community, huge.
The fantasy is going to be the media narrative machine. That narrative will tell you Kamala is absolutely amazing, historic, and she's going to show Trump to be old and racist. As time goes by, you will see the flaws, the weirdness, until you realize, holy hell, she's a basket case.
They're just so excited. They're so energized. It's historic. It's also, many people believe, all that's standing between the United States and a very, very dark place for this country.
A lack of a likability issue, inauthenticity issue that we saw with Hillary Clinton as well. She also disconnects from working voters. I mean, this is a San Francisco liberal.
There's a strategy behind all of this, which is not just about protecting Kamala Harris, but also going on the offense in terms of what Donald Trump and his allies may try to do to her in the coming months.
There will be accusations that if you don't like Kamala, we've already heard it, you're a sexist and you're a racist.
It's a short campaign now, 100 days to go, which puts more pressure on the press to cut through the charges and the countercharges on both sides, in fairness to the vice president and the former president, who's drawn so much negative coverage over the last decade. I'm Howard Kurtz, and this is Media Buzz.
There's also a time and a place for new voices, fresh voices, yes, younger voices.
You don't need to be a media analyst to see that the 59-year-old vice president is bringing more energy to the trail than the 81-year-old president. But it's all scripted so far. Harris got a rousing reception from the campaign staff in Wilmington, but stuck to the same script at a Milwaukee rally the same day.
Predators who abused women. Fraudsters who ripped off consumers. Cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type. Predators who abused women. Fraudsters who ripped off consumers. Cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type.
Donald Trump, who had long planned to run against Biden, is now taking aim at his new opponent and what she knew about Biden's decline.
If Kamala will lie to you so brazenly about Joe Biden's mental incapacity, then she will lie to you about anything. She can never, ever be trusted.
Joining us now to analyze the coverage, Ben Domenech, editor-at-large at The Spectator and a Fox News contributor. And in San Diego, Laura Fink, founder of Rebel Communications. Ben, any question in your mind that the media, most of the media, are gushing over Kamala Harris? I mean, the New York Times has a piece today by a comedy writer defending her laugh.
Yeah, look, I don't think that this is something that should come as a surprise to anybody who's paid attention to the way that the media has depicted Kamala Harris over the past several years. The simple fact is that she has a very weak record. She is not someone who was qualified, really, when it was coming to the decision to choose her as vice president. She was ripped out of a situation where she had achieved 0% of the vote in order to be Joe Biden's vice president. And now she occupies this wonderful position of essentially having the path paved for her by the Democrat elite in order to take over not just the presidential nomination, but I believe effectively the active president of the United States. I believe Joe Biden is the president in name only, and that nothing will happen between now and November that goes against anything that Kamala Harris really wants to happen. But I will just say this: She is a talented politician. She had perhaps the greatest launch of any of the 2020 candidates. She is not somebody who the Republicans should underestimate because she has the ability, I believe, to communicate and to do so, very well in terms of hitting her marks, saying her lines, doing what is needed in order to achieve the kind of response that she wants.
Well, let's put up that New York Post cover where she's being crowned. For those who think it's the coronation. Laura, I get that she's the news story. She's raised $200 million. She's inherently more interesting. But I don't think I've seen such favorable coverage since 2008 when Barack Obama was running.
Yeah, well, you also haven't seen the Olympic Michael Phelps-like dominance of the things Ben was just talking about. 100,000 volunteers in the span of a week, more than 30,000 voter registrations, breaking records, $250 million raised to her campaign and to allied groups, clearing the field. And then, of course, there's those poll numbers. She has caught up within the margin of error in that time with Donald Trump, who was dominating the polls prior. So I really don't think you can overestimate the dominance of her campaign, the skill with which she's executed it, and the way that she's harnessed that media attention. So I think we need to give credit where credit is due. She's earned it.
Okay. Let me play some sound on this whole question. I'm going to read some headlines about Kamala Harris and whether she was the border czar, which obviously is an important issue in the campaign. Roll it.
Okay. Do you have any plans to visit the border?
At some point, we are going to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I don't understand the point that you're making.
Well, it's not my first trip. I've been to the border many times. As the person in charge of the response.
So the important aspect of this visit is leading this visit after the work that we did in Guatemala and Mexico.
Listen to these headlines, Ben. Time. Kamala Harris was never Biden's border czar. New York Times. Why Republicans keep calling Kamala Harris the border czar. Misleading phrase. Axios. The Trump campaign and Republicans have tagged Harris repeatedly with this border czar title, which she never actually had. Axios 3 years ago. Harris, appointed by Biden as border czar. What does all this tell you?
Howie, Barack Obama had 29 czars who were assigned to various projects. None of them had the official title czar in their title. Well, because czar is not a word that we use as a title within the United States.
Big with
America.
The Soviets.
I mean, it's Soviet. We're not that. It's journalistic sort of shorthand for special assistant to the and look, Van Jones, someone who obviously occupied the green job czar position, was fired from that position. He was never a czar, okay? And so you could easily go back and say that. She was assigned this as, under her prerogative, a priority that she was going to address, both the base sort of root causes of this problem, and in addition to that, all the relationships that we have when it comes to the Northern Triangle, et cetera. Okay, that is fairly described as a border czar, okay? And as it was under Barack Obama, by the way, there were two different border czars under him. So this is a situation where she is essentially trying to distance herself from this. And it's very amusing to me because until about 4 weeks ago, it was very convenient to assign the border czar metric to Kamala Harris because Joe Biden was the candidate. Yes. But now they have to sort of go back and rework it. It's absurd on its face. Everybody understands she actually had this responsibility. She did a terrible job at it, and there's nothing that's going to turn that around.
Well, Laura, if she's going to take the hit on the border, which seems fair game, shouldn't the press also give Kamala Harris some credit for the past legislative successes of the Biden-Harris administration?
Well, absolutely. And while we're talking about the border, I didn't see any mainstream media covering the fact that border crossings are down by 30% this month, and that's a 3-year low. They aren't talking about those Northern Triangle countries that have gone down by 200,000.
I love the fact that you said a 3-year low because it's
okay,
a 3-year low because it was a 4-year high. The first year of the Biden administration was the highest level of border crossings
let her finish
ever
your
saw
point.
in history.
Are we going to interrupt?
Go ahead.
Well,
Laura.
okay. Well, let me just finish. I would also love, while we're talking about media, for the media to cover immigration and the bill that was killed by presidential candidate Donald Trump, a bipartisan bill that was the strictest regulation and the greatest amount of funding
I opposed it.
So,
look, I'm sorry, Laura. I don't know your background. No. This is unacceptable. I worked on the immigration issue for 10 years in the 2000s. Okay,
Sir.
This is the worst bill that was ever proposed. It is not a hardcore bill. It is not something that any Republicans
But it is also
support.
true, and I want to let Laura finish.
It is garbage to suggest that this is in any way an enforcement bill. It was something that was terrible, and everyone should have opposed it, and they did.
But it is also true that it fell apart at the behest of Donald Trump.
I actually think it would have fallen apart without the behest of Donald Trump. I mean, I think when
Laura
John
finish.
Cornyn is opposed to it,
Ben,
okay, my old boss.
We have to get some equal time here, Laura.
well, you know, Ben's fired up about this, and I can understand why. But like I said, I wish the media would have covered that. I wish they'd cover the drop in border crossings. But you can't have, you know, everything wrapped up in a bow. The border czar is a line of attack fomented in right-wing circles, and it just didn't stick. And I understand usually conservative media is really good at getting their message across there, and they didn't do it this time, and that's all right. You know, Kamala Harris is going to have to contend with the border issue.
The
We got to let her come out of the gate
called her the border czar.
on fair footing.
I mean, come on.
Wow, meltdown, Ben.
Circles.
Just melting down.
All right. Let me move on because I have a question reserved just for you. Kamala Harris and J.D. Vance, who we'll talk about a little later, both have a long history of controversial comments. But I don't see the press making an issue out of Kamala Harris having played a role in setting up a bail fund for criminals arrested in the BLM riots after George Floyd was murdered. She said she was against fracking. Now she has an aide said she's not against fracking. It seems like they're going through all of JD's stuff and not so much some of the past very liberal things that the vice president has said.
Look, the vice president is a progressive. She's far to the left of the country in so many different respects, including the border, I would say. And I think that that's one of the reasons that, you know, frankly, a lot of Republicans, I believe, you know, were confident that if she was ever going to be the nominee, you know, this is going back, you know, months when there was speculation about a change, that they would be able to confront her, that they would be able to deal with that. What I think that they've underestimated is that there is such an investment in advancing her cause from her California backers, from Hollywood, from everything that she's done in the past, that they're going to have to really be facing, you know, climbing uphill to try to frame her as being someone who is a progressive, you know, who is a liberal on this, that is out of step with the country. In fact, I think that they, you know, are going to be facing a real challenge with that because as much as she has been defined in the public eye, it's been in kind of a silly way as opposed to something that is actually, you know, offensive to the American people.
Laura, it was a major criticism of Joe Biden that he avoided interviews and press conferences. So far, Kamala Harris hasn't taken a question even from voters.
Well, you know, we're working on a week here, Howie. Let's give her a little bit of time. What I do know is that she's nailing it on the stump. And so you can look forward to that, and she will answer questions. And in fact, you know, she wants a debate. She wants the challenges. And so I think you see someone who's hungry and who's batting 1,000 in this first week. So before we criticize her, let's let her get out of the gate.
All right. I just want to mention that Donald Trump has seemingly at least put on hold the idea of debates, saying, well, the nominee could be somebody else. In fairness to the former president, he negotiated those terms when he was debating Joe Biden. Suddenly, as a new nominee, I think he's entitled to renegotiate. We'll see what happens there. When we come back, Donald Trump unloading on a new and much younger target.
I'm Steve Doocy. I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.